It is my special and wonderful privilege to introduce to you a lady who has moved back to Athabasca, grew up in Athabasca, and knows firsthand what it can be like to struggle when they are different. She is a trained social worker. She has a huge passion for neurodiversity, and not just for being an advocate for folks with autism spectrum disorder and other things, but also is fiercely committed to educating the rest of us. I have learned so much from her. She started a Facebook group in Athabasca specifically to educate us on neurodiverse ways that our brains work and how not every brain works the same way. She's just so inspiring. And I hope that we will all learn some more from Eryn. So if we can have Eryn spotlighted, this is your time, Eryn. We're wanting to hear your story.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for having me here. It is a little weird to talk on Zoom and know I'm addressing more than one person, so I'll do my best. My name is Eryn. I actually went to elementary and junior high school in Rochester, and I went to high school in Athabasca. And I have lived in Athabasca on and off, but since I was 18, I primarily lived in Edmonton. And before I start, I want to read a quote that really resonates with me and really, really takes me back to what Monica was saying about us all being different and human beings and really honoring how each one of us is unique. So this quote is from Bell Hooks, who died last year, but she was a prominent writer, and most of her writing centered around the importance of love and acting out of love. So she says, queer, not as being about who you're having sex with. That can be a dimension of it. But queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and thrive and to live. So when I was younger and I really didn't have access to information about being queer really was. I didn't have any role models around me in my life. It wasn't represented on TV. When I was in high school, I didn't even understand that I was bisexual because I thought that because I was attracted to men, that meant that all the other feelings or experiences I was having were not legitimate. And so everything was trumped by what was supposed to be normal. I watched, and I went to high school in the 90s, and I watched every one of my peers who was queer or different be very physically punished for that. I don't think there was a single person that came out that didn't end up bloody and on the floor or needing some kind of medical care. So I was in the closet until my late 20s, really. But the thing with the closet is, as one of my favorite queer comedians says, the thing with the closet is it isn't shame proof. Other people might not know who you are, but you do. And you can hear, especially when, like me, because I also date men and I've been married and have children, when you're in the closet, you can hear what people actually think about the people like you. And you know that lives inside of you. And you begin to hear it again and again, just even comments or people you love, people you respect, your favorite teacher, the mentor you admire. You hear them start to say things about how they wish they could get rid of queer kids. They think that it's a result of bad parenting. And the people that you love and respect and have looked up to build that shame in you. I know for me, I internalized a lot of the homophobia. Just because you're queer doesn't mean you get a free pass and you don't learn the things that the society and the community around you is sharing with you. You learn the messages and you learn to apply them to yourself. Coming out, the biggest process for me was unlearning all the hatred that I had unintentionally allowed to latch onto myself. And when I came out, I did live in Edmonton. So it was different for me, and I had a community around me that was very accepting. And one of the reasons I had moved back to Athabasca was after I had my son, I'd had an experience at a nonprofit in town where I was working with youth, and I was running the center. And at a board meeting, the board had just made it very clear how much they disliked queer kids and how they didn't really want them in the community, and their queer people were just not equal. They were not the same. They were not as good. And I actually ended up filing a formal complaint with the Alberta Human Rights Commission. I did lose my job. I was harassed and threatened in the community. This was only a decade ago. I did win my claim with the Human Rights Commission, and I asked for training and an apology letter, and I did get those things, but it changed the way I felt in the community. I had been told that I was unprofessional, that I would never work in social work in Athabasca again. I received emails for months, and eventually me and my family just moved back to Edmonton. When we came back here, the United Church was my mother hen. It was. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. My friends in the community who are also queer, I didn't want them to experience the backlash that I was dealing with. And it resulted, this historical stuff and the bigotry I've been facing resulted in me losing another job and me having a mental health crisis. And not knowing where to turn to, I turned to Reverend Monica. And she came and she listened to my story. And what she brought with her was a spark of light and hope. And when I talk now to the younger people in our community, their experience is far from perfect, but it is different than what mine was. When I talk to younger children, they talk about their fears being about finding a safe peer group or the safe peers. So there is that progress. It can be frustrating. I know a lot of the young people I've spoken with have already struggled with suicide, parental rejection. A lot of their parents don't have the information. They react, and there's just really nowhere in Athabasca to learn those things. But Monica and the rest of the congregation were so welcoming that shame that even though my head knows that I'm not any less than, the shame that lives in my heart may never go away. But I can see in the younger kids that their shame is less. And finding out that the United Church was becoming affirming made me feel like I could stay in Athabasca. It made me feel like there was hope. And even though everything wasn't perfect, people still cared and people were doing the work, even in the moments when those of us who are dealing with depression can't, because it's too much. One of my friends recently came out and she told me that she doesn't even want to advertise or have anyone know where she lives or put a flag on her house, a pride flag, just in case. There's still safety concerns she has. I know that there's a lot of people who aren't comfortable being out in a small town, and Having a place that's working towards being an affirming, even a jumping off point, a lighthouse, a spark when you're in a sea and you're drowning and you don't know where to turn, is everything. I am so grateful. I don't even know how to say it. I don't even know. But I do know that I am so excited to work with the rest of the congregation and try and build in our community and let other people know that we are building an ark. And Monica told me that, just like the children I've been talking to are talking about identifying safe piers and safe harbors. Ignorance will always exist in the world. Hatred will always exist in the world. But knowing there's a safe harbor, even somewhere where I can stop fighting and rest and be accepted and feel less shame, changes everything. I didn't really plan what I was going to say, and I think that is pretty much what I have to say. But if anyone has any questions or anything after, I would love to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Eryn. I hope that we as a congregation can continue to move towards becoming the affirming church that we intend. It just brings it home, doesn't it, folks, that this is happening to real people. And this is happening to children. And we are called to be a mother hen. And I'm just reading some of the chat messages here. Cecile writes, welcome home, Eryn. Thank you so much for speaking from your heart with such courage. And I think that is how I certainly feel too. We do this because we're called to do this, and it is a journey, and we're so grateful that you're with us to help us put a face on the challenges that so many people are living with. So thank you. Thank you so much.
For giving me a space, a safe space to share my story.